I'm Nick Lee, and I'm a man who lives by gratitude, character, and faith.
So a big part of our program is built around character.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me, like, is there a parent or a coach who's helped shape your character?
For me, it'd be the obvious one would be my dad. He was just a good, positive male influence on me. He's in the military, so raised as a military kid, so discipline and hard work were obviously stuff that were kind of built in. And he was just my hero growing up. I always wanted to be in the Army. Not so much anymore, but he was he was my hero, and I strove to be like him. And he also supplied me with other good positive role models through movies and television and stuff like that.
Oh, really cool. How do you think that affected your performance?
Sure. He's someone who always strove for perfection and everything. And I'm what you would call a perfectionist now as well. I've refined that over the years to serve me better, but him being somebody who was always going to give 100% into everything that he's doing, it rubs off on me. And the same thing with, I have two brothers, they're the same way as well. So.
Oh, that's great. Did they both wrestle?
They both wrestle. Joe wrestled here. He's the middle brother, and then the youngest is Matthew. He still wrestles here.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah.
So are there any teammates at Penn State who you look at their character and say, hey, these are men of character that might have affected my performance again?
Sure. We have a lot of, high performing individuals in our room, all of which are men of good character. Specifically guys that I'll shout out, not that I want to leave anybody out,
right,
because we have a lot of them, but right now I'm with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, and somebody who, he didn't go to Penn State, but he's an integral part of our program now, is Kyle Snyder. He's a man of faith, and has a one-track mind with what he does. Never heard him say any word that was remotely mean or hurtful. He's a guy that really lives out his faith and everything like that. So he's a guy that I would shout out. And then I guess another guy who was also didn't start at Penn State but came in and became once again an integral part of the Penn State community. It would be Max Dean.
Right.
He was my roommate as well for my whole last year of college, and so I got to know him really well. But another guy that just lives out what he talks about.
Right.
He walks the walk and he talks the talk, and just an amazing individual, and I think that shows in everything he does.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what drew you to Penn State?
Sure. Well, I actually was thinking about not doing sports in college, but then I took an unofficial visit to Penn State, and I met the coaches and stuff, and my thoughts were, well, if I'm gonna wrestle in college, I want to go wrestle at the best place possible.
Right.
I want to go, be a champion. And so I think the people that were involved here drew me to Penn State. It was a very different vibe than other places that recruited me. It was more human, I would say, and less transactional.
Right.
It was more about how you're going to come in and relate to the community that they had built within the Penn State wrestling program. Yeah.
Interesting. And for our program, connected community is a vital part of success.
Yes. And
all the different wrestlers who come in, Jason or Max, who sat down here, Morgan, they all talk about that idea of the team and being in the room with these other guys. And Max was talking about the reason he wants to show up is not to let those guys down.
Yes.
What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think, wrestling is kind of a perfect analogy to life, in that you have to be a strong individual, because whenever you compete in wrestling, there is no one else on the mat that's going to help you. It's just you. So you have to have strong individual traits and be self-reliant. But then on the other side of that coin, you're not meant to go through life as an individual. Communities are what makes us strong, and it's how we build strong societies, and it's how we lift up other individuals that maybe aren't as strong. So I think that focusing on developing my individual traits, but through learning with a strong community, whether it's coaches, teammates, and or anybody else that's involved in the community is important. And yes, what he said about not wanting to let your guys down, that's a huge factor, especially if you're a guy who maybe things aren't going too well for.
Right.
Sometimes that safety net is, well, I gotta make sure I'm doing the right things for my community, because if you're just an individual and things aren't going well, then it's easier to quit. So I think that having that safety net of the community is important, especially whenever things go wrong. And that's one thing that my dad always told me was, if you're down on yourself or things aren't going well, help others, and that's the best way to lift yourself.
That's outstanding. I love. Let's go. That's it.
Yeah, man.
That's it. I love how I never heard somebody refer to it as a safety net. Like it's a great way to think about it.
Sure.
And actually, people think about it the other way. Like you were talking about, hey, things aren't going well for me. To take the pressure off is like, that's where my community, I feel more supported there.
Sure.
And again, that's ground zero of our program. So I'm going to go backwards 2 clicks.
Yeah.
What your dad said, one of the things in terms of role models, you said some other people and some other. What were some of those other ones? And I don't know. I felt like there might be something cool in there.
He had me watching Braveheart, for example, from an early age.
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom. Yeah. So we had me watching movies like that, Gladiator, John Wayne, that kind of stuff. Positive male role models, and he was in the military, he was deployed and stuff. So I think it's important to, when you have kids and they're going to be influenced by who they watch and stuff. And television and media is such a huge part of that these days, and so. I think that I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but showing me those kind of movies and stuff from a young age, it instills good values.
Right, and the stories, right? Like in Philly, we got I'm a Philly guy. We have a statue of Rocky, and people are like, "That guy's not even real." But I'm like, the story of Rocky is really real. Like, how do you overcome struggle? How do you persevere when all the odds are stacked up against you? As a guy, I have all these Rocky shirts, so I understand that. That's a great role model, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing that's been, there's no fiction that's not based on reality. So, any story is a human story.
Yeah, amen. That's great stuff. So let's talk about gratitude. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. Sure. Again, that's really the crucible of our program is coming in with gratitude. And I've heard different wrestlers talk about Coach Cal speaking about gratitude. What does gratitude mean to you?
Sure. Gratitude's a tough one because it can turn into a cliche really easily if you're not careful. And for me, gratitude is perspective. So I wake up every morning and I'm in a big bed and I have blankets and I have a pillow and I have a roof and I'm not going to worry about what I'm going to eat. And I'm not going to worry about whether I have clean water, and I have a car that I can drive anywhere. And I have anybody that I can call. I have a supercomputer in my pocket that will let me look up anything. Like, I live a life of more wealth than most humans will never see in their entire lives. Right. So I think that perspective is important. So I think realizing that you have won the lottery waking up in America is important. And for me, I'm someone who's interested in history and current events and stuff. And so me being somewhat knowledgeable, I guess, on how people live in the rest of the world, I think helps my gratitude. And I think it's your duty to an extent to understand the plight that other people go through so you can better understand your own situation. And then with that perspective, I think there's a question of, well, what are you going to do that now that you won the lottery, you live in America, you're blessed with all these perks and you don't have to worry about like getting food. What are you going to do with that? And so I think whenever you have kind of those base needs taken care of, then you have a little bit of a higher calling after that. Right. And so and it's up to each individual to decide what that is. Right.
So how about your community? Do you have gratitude for the people around you?
Absolutely. I mean,
in the room or out of the room?
Sure. I'm surrounded by Olympic champions and world champions every day. I get imposter syndrome every day. It's incredible. It's that there's no one luckier than me. It's awesome. Being surrounded by hyper successful humans is crazy to me. Right. And so you absolutely have to be grateful for the people around you. And I think the way that you show gratitude is by giving back to them and doing what you can to help them as well. Community doesn't work one way, right?
Right. Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
So coming around the back nine of this thing, I want to talk about for you. Like, I want to, a couple more things is for you, and go back to you as a kid.
Sure.
Are there any stories, or even adult, that were formative to you that helped shape you either in success or in failure? Moving around. I guess as a son of somebody who's in the military, you might have moved around. Any of that helps you be like the Nick Lee that's on the world team?
Sure. I we didn't move around too much, but obviously Dad was gone and stuff for deployed. Not that he was only gone for, there's some years whenever I was younger, but there's plenty of stories out there. Obviously I mentioned some movies and stuff, but as a man of faith, I read the Bible and stuff, and one story that always stuck with me was the book of Job. And the book of Job, essentially everything gets taken from Job, and he hits some very hard times. And the way that he keeps perspective is he stays strong in his faith to God. And I think that that's a very it's an interesting book because it shows that whenever everything is taken away from you, or when everything is stripped away from you, everything that you consider your identity, then who are you underneath all of that stuff? So, for me being a wrestler and someone involved in business and stuff like that, if I were to take all that away, what is underneath? And is that the stuff that defines me, or is it my relationship to other people and my relationship to God? So,
right. Well, and Paul talks about it in another way, set your mind on things unseen.
Yes.
Right? So it's those things underneath. Like, who are you? Like, how do we, we don't want to pay too much attention to the things of our lives, but more to the spiritual nature of our lives and the things that make us up.
Yes.
And again, I think you're nailing that, right? Coming in the front door on that
Sure.
stuff, the things you're addressing. So the last question is, why do you think this is important to take this to kids? Like, what do you think about these are like going to be meaningful for a young adult?
Sure. Well, I don't think it's any secret. We live in a world right now where a lot of people are really struggling to find meaning and find what they're going to do, what's their role in society, and I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that we've lost our faith and we've just lost our way a little bit, and so I think that with kids, in order to live, happy, successful lives, it's not necessarily about what am I going to achieve, what am I going to do. It's more about the process and the relationships that you're going to build along the way, right? And so I'll go back to a book I read called Chop Wood, Carry Water, and it's all about the process.
Yeah.
It's a great book. It's important because most people that have won a national championship will tell you win a national championship or you achieve something great, and then it's like, okay, what's next? And a lot of people have hit their lowest of lows, while they're in the midst of winning, incredible tournaments or achieving things, right? Because your eyes are on the top of that mountain, but on the other side of the peak of the mountain is just a valley. And so you got to focus on process and what you're doing. So for kids that want to have a particular kind of life, they should look at people that are acting out what they want to be, for example. So for me growing up, and I watched Braveheart, and I'm watching William Wallace or whatever his name is out there acting out and acting for freedom. That's something that I can learn from, right? And he doesn't get it in the end, right? And sometimes that's a tough lesson to learn as well. But back to what we talked about, if achievement or an accolade is the goal, it is the goal. But if that's all you're focused on, then you're not focused on the right things. So building up a community is building up a community, and building up yourself within that community is something that is going to last beyond whatever mountain you're climbing.
Right. And the process, chop wood, carry water, get enlightenment,
Yes.
chop wood, carry water. Like, you still got to come back to the same thing. You got to
Yes.
come back to the same process as what they're talking about in the book.
Yes.
So And it sounds like you have that process. You're always setting yourself back to a process that brings you back in your moments and being intentional about,
Sure.
okay, this is it. It's not about the goal. It's about the process that's going to take me to that goal and
Sure.
committing to that process.
Yes, and people get away from that because I think sometimes they think, well, the process is boring.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's where faith comes in as well. You have to understand that you're not meant for worldly success or anything like that. You're meant for, what comes after. And so build within yourself, a fortress is kind of how I think about that. You're building for the future. You're not trying to achieve any worldly goal, and those things don't bring you happiness anyway.
Right.
So, and part of your program and a really important part of that is uplifting your community. So.
Right. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Nick Lee, thanks for being a road warrior and being a man of character, and it's a pleasure to have you in here today.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, brother.